Hey everyone, Dan and Don coming to you from
Hello.
theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Once again, that website is theclinicaltrialsguru.com. We believe it's the internet's best place for clinical trials content and information. We bring you guest gurus every day. Today we've got Barbara Duck. She's a very popular, well, she has a very popular blog called The Medical Quack, and that is a play on her name, which is her real name, Barbara Duck. And it's www.theducknetweb.blogspot.com. She's been running this blog for 5 years, and I gotta say, Barbara, thank you. When we first started out doing this guru thing about 2 years ago, you were one of the first big bloggers to feature some of our videos, so
Oh, thank you.
we're very grateful to you for that. We've been getting some coverage lately, but you were the first big time blogger to feature us, so we are forever grateful to you.
Definitely.
Oh, great. Well, you're more than welcome and all. So I try to put a little bit of everything out there, what I think is going to be of interest.
Right, now let's talk a little bit about you. Give us an idea. Some of our viewers may not know who you are. Give us a little bit about you. What's your background, who you are, and then we'll talk about your blog.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm kind of a strange person, if you will, and I say that because I work at Balance at the time. Before I got into healthcare, I spent about 25 years in the logistics business, which was, basically everything is very high tech. As long as 12 years or so ago on the freight platforms, we had people running around on forklifts with infrared shooting, barcodes off the, packages and so on and so forth. And then I came into healthcare where it's like, I went back to the Fred Flintstone days, kind of, And basically, how I got started was I was helping doctors here in the Southern California area, and I started writing a little bit of code. Started many years ago with a little bit from some old Visual Basic cell phone programs back before the PDAs were cell phones with Microsoft with their system. And anyway, it's kind of been a hobby, but I started consulting after I left the logistics business. And some of the first interesting small little database programs I wrote were for doctors here in the Southern California area. They were getting their capitation statements, and we had what we call the floating patient scenario out here. So in other words, they get their monthly statement, and some months they had patients on there, and some months they were gone. And there was nothing wrong. They hadn't changed or gone anywhere. It's just that somebody was running some queries. We don't know exactly what happened, but the doctors were missing out on their money. So I told them to basically get their capitation statements every month in a spreadsheet format and run it through my little program and import it in, and they could go back and contest their EOBs and get the rest of their money from their IPAs and their HMOs. And so for a few years that worked very well. But by today's standards, we've got a lot more transparency, and so that's caught in a heartbeat. But back then, going back about 9, 10 years or so ago, it wasn't so transparent, and it was a godsend because they were, recovering lost money that they would have never found quickly because didn't have the time, to go through stacks and charts, and you know what a nightmare that would be if a practice has about 3,000 patients. Ah!
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, and then after that, I ventured into writing an electronic medical records program, which I sold for a very short amount of time. I used to write in Visual Basic 6, and I don't write anymore, but the system is now in mothballs. And the reason I left writing was about the time my system was out there, it was still client server, and everything was moving to the web. So I decided, it's time to put it in mothballs and consult because it takes a team of developers today. And I would just literally die at my keyboard trying to keep up, so it was a common sense move. But what I learned from the experience helps me out today with my prospectus on how queries are run, how they're derived, what kind of output they have, so on and so forth. Of course, with HIPAA standards, that type of thing. And actually, when I started writing my medical record system, I basically had the very basics on ICD-9 codes and CPTs, but I didn't know much, so that was a learning experience for me as well to compile those and bring them in, as well as the LabCorp and the Quest diagnostic connection to bring in the lab results. Well, that was a mouthful.
Don, you want to? We both have a lot to say.
Yeah, that's the question again. I think this is a good time too for the audience to segue into what is the medical quack.
Okay, the Medical Quack is my blog. I'm kind of the accidental blogger. About the time I left writing my medical records program, everybody kept bugging me to blog, and it was like, oh God, if I start doing that, I'm gonna have to keep it up. But anyway, I succumbed to the pressure and so on and so forth, and started it by accident. And again, being I'm kind of a lopsided person with my former background of management and sales for 25 years, and then going into being a total shut-in writing code. I mean, those are two opposite ends of the spectrum. It takes a while for me to, bounce back and forth and everything here once in a while. But being I guess I'm kind of a hybrid person, or what you might want to call a creative technologist. I guess I've heard that buzzword out there. But it gives me the perspectives that I have, and I don't think anybody else is doing it, because I don't know of any other two people that have both sales and people and coding wrapped up into the same person.
It's rare, very unique, and very interesting set of skills.
Yeah, and it's challenging too sometimes, though, because people catch me off guard. If I'm into I went to a convention here not too long ago with my sponsor here up in LA. It was the Israel conference, and it was really funny. It was probably one of the most focused business conferences I've ever been to. And I met, all kinds of people from all different walks of life. I spoke with a gentleman, Elon, who now works at Microsoft. That he was the one that brought the Connect technology to Microsoft. And it's really funny because the minute that I brought up the fact that I wrote code or used to write code, the conversations elevated 10 points immediately, because right away, these were people also that had that in their background and kind of were out there talking, as well. And they're kind of like me, hybrid people. And it was fascinating. I learned a lot, and in a way it was kind of cool because I felt like, oh good, there's some other whacked out folks like me out there.
Yeah, they do exist. We're definitely going to get back into the technology a lot. We're going to cover virtual clinical trials that Pfizer's been doing. We're going to cover medication compliance in clinical trials and outside of clinical trials with technology. We're going to talk about QR codes, which I know you love and you're a big fan of. But you said something interesting, and we got a lot of research professionals watching, like people working in the industry, and they always ask me, why do you blog, and aren't you scared that you have to do it every day? And you were mentioning the same thing. Why do you think people in our industry, or in the healthcare industry in general, why do you think there's not more bloggers? Do they just not have time, or are they scared, or what is it?
Well, it's probably all of the above. Right now, I hand it to any doctors and everything that have time to spend blogging, and it's high five for any of them that do. It just depends. In different parts of the country, doctors are carrying different workloads, and I just recently spoke at the EMD's Medical Records annual convention in Austin, and one of the things that really stood out in my mind, and actually I blogged about it, was I was talking to one practice there where their doctors are working 8 to 8. The doctors are working 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and their staff was all there. And each doctor was seeing 100 patients or more a day. And these people were not complaining. They were there learning how to use more technology so they could keep up and do it better. And I'm just like, to me, that said a lot, because you look at the perseverance and the dedication, and I'm like, if that would have been me, I would have been complaining. But
so they didn't have time to be the HCSM Twitter chat?
No. No. These are people that were like in overload, like 24/7.
Yeah.
But a lot of admiration. So again, when every doctor doesn't work those hours, but it's out there. So any doctor that can find time, and give information, more power to them. Some are scared. Yeah, you've got HIPAA requirements and this and that, and you don't want to, violate any HIPAA laws. That scares a few people off. And what was the third choice I had here?
Well, what was it? Not enough time, and they're scared. I mean, I think those are the two big ones. I haven't figured it out. I know that in the research in clinical trials, we don't expect the principal investigators to be blogging, but certainly someone from the organization should make an attempt at social media, and they do. But it's I've talked about it before. It's kind of weak.
It's too technical. It's
Yeah.
I don't know if some of the ones I've seen, if they're trying to do what I call self-impress, and the other thing, just back to the part about being scared. I've talked to a couple clinicians, and one of the things that come up is they're always afraid they're going to say something wrong, or someone's going to come back and sue them later.
Yep.
And my thing is, then don't say anything wrong.
Yes, it's very simple.
I mean, it's just.
Well, share the example, without mentioning names.
Well, I had a couple clinician, I want to call them friends, because we worked together. Well, at least one of them I used to work together, and I've become good friends with both these guys, and they're really good guys, really super nice docs, and they got into research themselves, and they're doing quite well. And I was going to bring them on to allow them to expose themselves to our viewer on what they're doing as far as research. And I also wanted them to talk about how they're able to differentiate between their private practice and research, which I think is very important for a lot of the professionals out there and getting into research, because doctors get into this sometimes thinking, well, I'm a clinician and they need a doctor, I can do this, but it's not the same as running a medical practice. And they're very afraid. Their attorney said, no, don't do that, because if you say something wrong, you'll get sued. And I'm thinking, well, that's a little overkill. Because
it's real for the doctors though too, because when I spoke at the EMD's convention, that's one of the things we hit on. Like we kind of spelled out when to use Facebook, when to use LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. Because they can use Facebook to grow their practice, but basically the rule of thumb, I mean, what I tell everybody is what goes on the internet stays on the internet.
Yeah, there you go.
It's not Las Vegas.
It's the opposite of Vegas.
Yes. But, and I can see where the doctors do have to be careful. There was a Facebook case where a doctor did get disciplined. The doctor was writing, she didn't give out any names, she was doing basically everything correct. And but what happened was on Facebook, she was talking about a certain condition she was treating. Again, didn't say male or female, anything about the patient. But wouldn't you know, the odds are another patient figured out who that patient was and blew the cover. So it's like she got disciplined. And, so again, you have to be very careful. And that's kind of a freaky one, but it happened.
So another patient figured out who this person was talking about on Facebook.
Who the doctor was talking about, figured out the patient's name. Even though the doctor had been very careful, didn't say male, female, anything about the patient, age, but just because of the condition she was talking about, a patient figured it out.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. They do have to be careful.
Right.
So, what I tell, doctors a lot, I mean, yeah, you can grow your practice on Facebook, and sure, you can answer questions about what your office hours are all day long.
Yeah.
Or, that type of thing. But, keep it careful. But, don't go into any discussions of certain conditions. I mean, just like that one right there was a wake-up call for everybody.
I think
absolutely. My thing is, in my approach, because we've had a few of our docs, is just talk about the disease and the treatment of the disease. Don't go into saying I'm treating someone or I've treated someone. Just say, hey, this is the prescribed treatment for that situation. This is what I would recommend.
Yes.
And I think if you stay in those categories, you're safe.
You need to talk in theories, I think. My dad, I convinced him to do some video blogs here and there, and he just talks in theories about what a condition is, and doesn't really mention anything else except what it is. And so I don't think you can get in trouble for that. But, if you expand on it, I guess you can shoot yourself in the foot if someone would ask a follow-up. So I think theories are okay for physicians.
Exactly. And what we talked about though too, I mean, I was telling the practices, I mean, yeah, you can use Facebook to grow your practice because that's where they're going to attract individuals is from Facebook, and then use LinkedIn to affiliate with hospitals, other doctors, blah, 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 kind of So we kind of pretty well ironed it out.
Hmm.
And, again, and I kind of ended it up. My last statement was, I said, the all in results, I said, my opinion, it's a crapshoot.
Hmm. Yeah, it really is.
It is at times, yeah, because I mean, it's like, rolling the dice. So, but again, if you're smart and, just remember, don't put anything out there that you don't want the world to read.
Hmm.
Exactly. I agree with you.
Barbara, we recently had Craig Lipset on. He was the chief of research at Pfizer. I don't know if
Yeah.
you interact with him also on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay.
He sent me a couple funny remarks. Yeah, I know him.
Okay, yeah, he's a good guy. We were talking about, virtual clinical trials and how Pfizer embarked on this latest one. How is technology helping this, and do you see this as a trend that's here to stay for the future, or is it something that is probably not going to work out? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh no, I think it's a great move, and because basically I promote technology every area that I can, But I'm also, being I used to write code, I'm also pretty critical of the ones that dump garbage out there too. But anyway, back to the Pfizer, clinical trials. I thought that was great because this way, I mean, it's going to allow for more communication. I think you're probably going to get better information. Sometimes if they have the opportunity to, we've all had experiences where when something frustrates us, we sit down and write a letter. I'm just using that as an example. But I think with, being able to sit down as a participant, if they can sit down and write, I mean, it doesn't have to be mad, but just write their summary, you have time to more, think on it. And probably the investigators might get, a bit more information or, more so than what they may have experienced before. But as far as the convenience, I mean, that's number one. I mean, that's phenomenal because, you don't have to have the face-to-face follow up. I mean, again, I know it all depends on what kind of trial you have going. But, and I think too, and I do have to joke about this a little bit because I write about so many different devices that have come out. And actually, some of these have been taunted for clinical trials. They have a Wi-Fi shirt, So anyway, pretty soon you're going to be recognized. Oh yeah, there's that clinical trial guy with that Wi-Fi shirt on.
So you have a Wi-Fi
well,
shirt that you'll be able to be recognized when you walk into anywhere.
Oh yeah, not so much that though. It'll connect to your cell phone,
Mm.
and basically what you're having now, and what I mean, you kind of got to laugh at some of this, but the value of this is, in some of the drugs that they're treating, some of them may have a tendency to create a liver problem or hypertension, or you know what I mean. So basically, if somebody is participating in a trial that they think there might be a danger of elevated blood pressure, they can have a device that would, send the information back. So I would think that's from a safety standpoint, I would think the patient would like that because all of a sudden, if they start seeing elevated, blood pressure and they're taking a certain drug, it's like, oh, wait a minute, we better get this taken care of, or ask questions before somebody falls over.
And I can imagine the sponsor would love it too because they're going to get that adverse event immediately.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to
exactly.
wait. So I mean, that's actually pretty incredible.
And that's where I think, all this remote technology and everything with clinical trials is beneficial. I laugh though because I mentioned the Wi-Fi shirt, but right now, I mean, just from the personal health record side, there's so many different devices that are coming out. I mean, that the clinical trial guy might have something on his head, wearing a shirt, something around his ankle. So like I said, by the time he gets outfitted, everybody might say, oh, there's that clinical trial guy. I know I have to throw a little humor in there because it's really funny because I see so many different types of devices and everything. So, and I even scratch my head at some of them. I say, gee, would somebody wear that?
Well, if you don't laugh in life, and life can get pretty boring and pretty rough. I was listening to a gentleman talk. He's a computer guru, and he was actually speaking in that direction on how he sees in the future where you'll be able to, from your television screen as lock right into your doctor, and you may have devices that you can plug in right into your TV that can check your blood pressure and do these different things where your doctor is able to do some degree of a physical without you leaving your home and the doctor leaving their office.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just the thought of all that is really phenomenal. And I don't know if you and maybe you have, and because my computer skills are 25 years old. I years as a in college as a requirement as a business major, you have to study advanced basics and write programs, and I'm talking about back in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You had the old stuff. You had COBOL.
Oh yes. And but I look at the stuff now, and I'm reading this article about this new chip called Synapse. Are you familiar with it?
Snaps? No, that's one. You caught me on that one.
Yeah, and I guess it's something they just developed, and with this chip, they believe they'll be able to, once they be able to use your computer, and just like we're having this conversation, it can be able to look at your background just like a human being would, and draw from your background and be able to respond based on the environment of your background. I mean, it's just.
Well, you know what? That brings up an interesting topic and everything here, too. Now, I report on a lot of devices like that, and there are devices. I mean, everybody knows about the camera you can swallow that takes your picture, all the way down. But there's also devices in the works, so, too. One the other day that my sponsor site had a gentleman speaking about. It's about a device that you swallow, and it goes into the digestive tract. And basically, it can find bleeding, and it even goes further than just finding bleeding. It also determines. It's so smart. It can determine whether it's new blood or old blood. So, and that's huge.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but there's on the electronic side. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. We've had the implant. Everybody's heard of the old Verichip company right now, and actually, they're working on a chip for diabetes and everything. So I don't know. It's really funny. When the chip first came out, everybody says, "Whoa, I don't want to be chipped." And then I said a couple years ago, I said, "I'll just wait a couple, 3 years." I said, "That thing's going to kind of migrate back around." And over in Germany and everything, there's I'm trying to remember, it was Verichip. They changed their name. But actually, the company has a partnership with Siemens over there in Germany, to where they're coming up with an application to, well, you can be chipped, and basically the information will go to the computer on your personal health record. So you have to have a reader, of course, but I mean it's pretty wild. There's they're trying to chip everybody for everything, and it gets interesting.
It gets very interesting. Talk a little bit about personal health records and how they relate to clinical trials. I know one of the biggest things in a clinical trial, right, Don, is obtaining subjects' records. So, there's a huge trend now with uploading all your PHRs, personal health records, online, on the cloud. Do you know anything about how secure these things are? Have there been any problems since people have been starting to do this? Am I thinking of the right platforms when I think of patients like me and things like that, or are they completely separate platforms?
Well, I'll tell you, I've got a whole section on my blog with about I think I'm over 500 posts now on personal health records. So I've covered that ever since basically Google Health and Health Vault came out. Of course, we all know where Google Health is going, but that's kind of too bad. I swear I laughed at that, because for something that didn't get enough interest, and is being discontinued for that reason, it has gotten more press than anything I've ever seen.
Google Health. Yeah, talk to us about that.
Not the fact that it came into being, the fact that it's leaving has gotten more press.
Right, yeah. Do you know why they shut it down?
I think it was, again, I read like everybody else on the web. I just think they had some other interests and so on and so forth. And, every company's got to look at what they're going to support and so on and so forth. And, I have both it's still around because I haven't closed it out yet. But I have both a Google Health and a Health Vault account. And, Microsoft came in, though. They basically came in and jumped way ahead of Google Health, though. They were seriously into it. But, Microsoft also has the advantage there, too. They had a lot of other healthcare software that it could work with, too. And, Google didn't have that in-house. So
Microsoft is well ahead of the game.
Yeah, that just gave Microsoft, a competitive jump and everything right there. And, I converse and everything, again, through Twitter and so on and so forth with some of the folks at, Microsoft and in various levels of their healthcare and so on and so forth. And but I use Health Vault myself, and I look at them as far as being probably about as secure as you're going to get out there. There's also a few others like Dacia. And oh, and then there's one other one. This one just doesn't get mentioned. And this is one of my, okay, HHS is probably going to come after me one of these days with loaded guns because I pick on them a little bit. But basically, hey, somebody's got to do it and wake you up. If I don't do it, somebody else will do it and be much worse than me. But the Surgeon General, there's the Surgeon General's PHR, which is free. And actually, I was talking with folks at Health Vault one day, and we were talking about, wow, how they really did build in a lot of accessibility and API with it, the whole bit. And then it's like the last year or so, it's like, duh, where'd it go? This is the government's free one for everybody. And it actually can integrate with other medical record programs. It's like, it just fell off the horse's back about a year or so ago.
So it's
But
not,
every once
it's
in a
no
while,
longer
I get a little bit, oh, what's the word? A little picky or just on a little bit of a soapbox on Twitter. And I say, hey, when are the folks at HHS going to become role models and tell us about how they use their personal health records?
Now,
I've gotten one answer so far, one person, but nobody else. And, that's the big thing we need is role models. Because your personal health record, can be all your storage information from your clinical trials. Perfect.
it would be ideal. And I know Quintiles is doing something. I don't know if they're the ones behind Health Vault or they're doing something else. But I know they're all making a push for that because it would make for cleaner data and theoretically faster enrollment in the trials. Is there? I'm going back to Google Health and Microsoft being ahead of the game. Have they just not found a way to monetize these things, or is there some kind of model that they have or they have not perfected yet as far as monetizing these platforms?
Well, Microsoft gives the Health Vault platform away. Anybody can work with it. It's on their, I believe it's on their Codeplex site. And, I mean, a lot of people think Microsoft sells everything that they create. They don't. They sell a lot of things, yes. But the Health Vault platform is one that anybody can work with. I mean, they can even brand it with their own name and take Health Vault off of there. A good example of some of the organizations, Mail has done that with the Health Vault platform, to where they customize it. So, and that basically, when they customize it, they can have it work with their medical record system as far as exchanging the allowed, amount of information, like with CCR standards and so on and so forth. So, but yeah, again, Microsoft was, way ahead of the game. But as an individual, there's nothing stopping you as an individual for signing up for your individual account, which is what I have. And I stuck I've got one on my 87-year-old mother. And you know what? If my 87-year-old mother can go into her doctor's office and Google Health Vault and log in, anybody can. So as far as not being able to use it, it's not that complicated.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I know they're pushing for. And it's very, very much related to the virtual clinical trials that we've talked about with Craig Lipset.
Mm-hmm.
Moving to another topic that you're an expert on, QR codes. Johnson & Johnson recently had that issue with the Tylenol. Was it Tylenol? What was it? They had a recall of something?
They've had a lot of issues. As a matter of fact, and I'll go a little bit further, I'm actually into the Microsoft tag codes. I mean, I do a little bit with QR. And the reason being for Microsoft tags is they've got more code written in there. It's a bit more secure, and you can use them through encrypted gateways. As a matter of fact, if you go to my blog at the very top, I've got 2 sections that are devoted to using Microsoft Tag in healthcare. As a matter of fact, MSDN has written me up twice on it. About a month ago, I got a call from the newspaper in Milwaukee. The name is skipping my brain. I blogged it. It's on my blog. And they interviewed about my thoughts and everything on using barcodes in healthcare. And when you go read that, and I've been written up in a couple magazines too, it's about being able to use your cell phone as a scanner and go in as a consumer or as a medical device or as a pharmacist checking in medications. Take that cell phone out and scan it and make sure it hasn't been recalled.
Wow.
So in plain language, because that's what it's for. That's basically what it does. That's the bottom line. It's you take your phone, you scan the product at the store, and it will tell you instantly whether it's been recalled.
Yeah, and I think a long time ago, your friend Craig that you mentioned, he's I think I sent him some tweets on it, and I've had I think it was Dennis from Sanofi read it on my blog, and he tweeted me back, said, "Hey, I'm sending that up to headquarters." It's had a lot of great favorable responses, and the article that I recently put in the magazine was about a man who died because the hospital, there was a recall for a clamp, and I mean, it was a horrible accident that happened. It got missed being pulled off the shelf. The man had his surgery. 4 days later, the clamp malfunctioned. The man died. That's preventable.
Wow. Right. So Microsoft tags is the way to do
Yeah,
it.
and they're very versatile. As a matter of fact, when you go back, I know I get on a soapbox here, so bear with me. When you go back to Health Vault, they connect to your Health Vault. You can get an EOB statement with that barcode and scan it with your phone and pop it into your health records too. So the Withings Wi-Fi scale, the tags work with that and provide security. I've written all that stuff up there on my blog. Let's see, I'm trying to think of, there's a partner of Microsoft Tag, it's called Razcon, and I've written quite a bit about with Bob from Razcon. He's created an encrypted gateway to use with these tags, and this is what the FDA would need to use, or to work with device and drug companies. Basically, to have a recall system, the drug and device companies are going to have to, of course, make up the tags and barcode it. But the advantage for compliance with the FDA is they get to keep a synchronized database, right? So the minute that one goes out, boom, the FDA's updated, they know. Less for them to have to run around and do. So it's easy compliance for the FDA. And again, just as a consumer, I've had people tell me when they go into Target and try and return like Tylenol that's been recalled.
Right.
If Target doesn't have it in their database, they give the customer a bad time. They say, well, we can't take it. It's not in our database. Well, that means when it's recalled, somebody at Target has to enter that stuff in so consumers can come get their money back. I did laugh, though, too, on the Tylenol. There's one funny post on my blog where I forget what country it was. In Central America, I said, well, we found a use for contaminated Tylenol. There's a certain brown snake, I think, that they can bait and it kills. So look that one up on the blog.
I gotta
So
check
there
that
is a
one out.
place
Bad,
where you
Barbara.
call Tylenol. It'll kill these snakes that were taking over in the rainforest down there. It's pretty funny.
I'm sure that's what J&J had in mind when they were making those.
Actually, I know a few people over at J&J, and yeah, I have some fun with them on that. I did send that to them. I said, is this the plan for the recalls?
Yeah, they're actually transitioning over to our next topic, which will be social media. J&J, they do pretty well. They have their own blog, right? Or is that Lily? Or both?
Well, J&J, if you've been reading lately, they took a lot of their social networks off.
Yes,
And
yes.
they also just recently removed a lot of their mobile applications, too. And this brings me to one of my favorite subjects as to, we have a lot of garbage software out there. In other words, it's like overdone. If you're going to write mobile software, write software that does more than just one thing. Write it up so it does several things so a consumer can have some value in it. Because, you just look at the App Store itself. Even outside of healthcare, look at the thousands and thousands of apps, And, tomorrow somebody will come out and write one that's very similar to it and so on and so forth. But getting back to the pharmaceutical companies, yeah, they were taking down some of their mobile apps because people weren't using them. And you got to look at where the consumer is these days. They're like overwhelmed.
Yeah, they don't need just
Software.
See, most of those apps, I think we blogged about this once. Those apps, we've looked at it. We've looked at this kind of area here of technology because we eventually want to build an app for clinical trial search engine, which we'll get into in a little bit. And most of these apps just seem like they're a website, but a mobile form of. You don't need an app for that. You can just go on the mobile website.
Exactly. And, and this is a phase at how technology is evolving. When everybody wrote them at first, it's like everybody had to rush out there and have an app. That was the thing to do. But now as we're evolving and we have more things, drawing our attention away, and we're just disrupted more than what we were even a year ago. we just don't have time for everybody's individual apps
The
anymore.
only apps we need are Angry Birds and Tiny Wings, right?
Actually, it's really funny. I gave the people at Windows 7 phone a bad time. I said, why did you have to put a game on there that says kill the duck?
Hey,
That's
Barbara,
true.
you should have your own app. You
There you
should
go.
have a Kill the Duck app.
Well, Windows Phone 7 has one,
Well, something
but
similar to that, and just make it. That'd be a great
The
idea.
reverse is save the duck.
Save the duck.
there you go. Now that's a good idea. I like that idea.
Save the duck. Something something revolving a duck. I think that'll be pretty good.
You know what? And actually, just real quick, and a little plug in here too for my Windows 7 phone. Um, Everybody I know is, I almost got an iPhone, but when the new phone came out, the one thing that I wanted was security, and that was my number one. And basically, so I'm one of the diehards that is stuck with I stayed with my Windows phone, and I'm waiting for the Mango update so I can have Skype again, but I'm sacrificing. But I'll tell you what, that is a darn good phone. And when you
Windows.
mentioned earlier about security, um, I stayed with my Windows phone.
As a Microsoft shareholder, this makes me very happy.
Well, you just need a few more cheerleaders like me out there, and you'll
I
be
do,
happy.
and I have an iPhone.
Yeah, and just
Well,
talk
you
me
know,
into
there's something
getting
wrong
one
with
too,
the
Barbara.
iPhone too, you know?
No, I like the iPhone, but Windows Phone. Yeah, I mean, going off topic a little, but do you think they're gonna bring in more apps? Is there a market for that, or are they working on that?
Oh yeah, they've got a major update coming up called Mango.
Mango. Right.
And that's what, yeah, I've been having to with the first version of the phone, which and I just love that phone. It works so great. They weren't able to put Skype in there, but the Mango update, I'm going to have Skype on my phone again, so I'll be happy.
Yeah, and they own Skype. Like you would think
Now,
that.
now for the layman people out there, what's a Windows phone? Would that be a BlackBerry or?
No, it's a actually you can get them at Verizon. That's where I got mine. It's an HTC phone, and it's running the operating
Okay.
system Windows 7.
Yep.
Is that the
Microsoft.
Android?
It's Microsoft.
HTC, isn't that the Android?
They're.
HTC makes Android phones too, but they make a Windows phone. It's the phone with the operating system. You can get an
Okay.
HTC phone with Android on it, or you can get one with the Windows 7 operating system.
Yeah.
But yeah, Windows 7 kind of took a bloodbath and everything here with the other two jumping out ahead. But right now, I'm actually pretty happy because I've been reading all the malware that's out there on Android, and I'm really pretty happy I've stayed with my Windows phone.
Yeah, it's Microsoft's answer to Google's Droid.
Okay.
That's kind of what they did. Yeah, they have to do that. Excuse me.
And it's hot, and it's one of the phones that you can opt out to give your location away. Yay! So I like to be private. So it's like I can have my Windows phone and not have to tell everybody where I'm at until I want to.
Yeah, no, I like that. Now, how can these, another important thing in clinical trials, besides, of course, records, is compliance with the investigational product. As Don knows, it's tough to keep the patients compliant, and you sort of have to take their word for it many times when they come back visit to visit. So how can technology help that? What's new in technology that can help us better assess who's being compliant in a clinical trial?
Okay, that's what this is a great subject too, because there are devices out there, and I prefer a device that connects directly to something like Health Vault for security reasons. Because a lot of times when they go to the web to these third parties, a lot of these third parties are profiling, collecting, and selling data. So when it comes to that, I'm going to go back to Health Vault again. Because as far as they can, there's all kinds of different programs that work with Health Vault, and it's a direct connection in there. And if you can do that versus going through the web, I do that in a heartbeat any day rather than using an application that goes to the web first. But there are different systems out there. There's one. Let's see, which company was it that has the chip in the pill? Actually, that did, I think, get FDA approval. Don't quote me on it for sure. I break so much of this stuff up. But basically, it tells the pill's location all through your body and everything, and it can create a data report and say, yeah, it started here and ended up here.
Okay. Yeah, I read about that one on Pharmalot, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm trying to remember who was it. I don't want to speak out of turn. I want to say it was Sanofi that invested quite a bit of money and everything in that.
we'll have
And
to look
again,
that up.
if you had something like that to where, the chip talks to your cell phone and it creates a data report, yeah, they could take that and send it off to the investigator and say, "Yep, here's, the 3 trips that the pill made today," or, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, because these, all these things we're talking about, they're very good in theory. I
I
think
think it's
we're,
Novartis.
well, yeah, I think it was Novartis that was doing this
That's
shit.
the one. You're right. Thank you. I stand corrected.
Thank you, Don.
Not a
Yep.
That's
problem.
where the iPhone comes in handy.
Yes, as I said, Dan talked me into this iPhone, and this is now my secondary computer.
And as an Apple
Good.
shareholder, I'm also very happy.
I say I grew up with nothing but IBM based models, and Dan's sort of moving me over to IBM gradually. I think he's brainwashing me here. I'm suspicious.
Well, you know what? They all work. I like both PCs and Macs. I got both.
Well, when I used to sell computers at one time, like I said, eons ago, and that's when I understood the whole computer industry. I don't understand anything anymore. It's left me. Uh, but anyway, we used to have an old saying is that when you flip around from the back, they all look the same.
Hmm. Well, I'll tell you, I was doing training years ago at the time, and that's for Intel. I used to do some part-time training for Intel. And the minute that they announced that Intel processors were going into the Macs, I said, "Aha! We're going to be able to run Windows on them soon. It won't take anybody very
You're
long, and
right.
they'll hack it, and it'll become real, and we'll have it." And what do we have today? We got it.
You're
Oh my God.
absolutely right. Yeah, you called
Yeah.
it.
Now, what I was going at was all the stuff we're talking about. It's excellent in theory. I mean, it's makes sense to everyone, and this is obviously where we're headed.
Hmm.
But because I know I work in the industry, and Don does too. The most technological thing we have in our clinic would be like, used for a study, without
Hmm.
mentioning names, would probably be like a personal diary for a patient to take home, right?
Yeah, these little PDAs. Yeah.
I mean, we're far from seeing
Wow.
these kind of things. So, and that was technology that we had like 10 years ago. And
Hmm.
they're barely starting to use the electronic data capture where you actually have to input the data online. You used to do it on paper just a few years ago.
Right.
So we're
Well,
far from all this stuff that we're talking about, right? Or are you saying we're closer than we think?
it's out there, but whether it's available and being used, that's two different things.
Mm,
Another thing I thought about here too as a second thought as far as monitoring compliance is, they came out with the prescription bottle that is wireless in somebody's home too, that basically sends out a little signal and tells you, a little beep. They use it for seniors, and there's no reason it couldn't be used for clinical trials too. That beeps and tells you when to take your pill, and then it makes a record of when you open the bottle and blah blah blah.
Wow.
So if you wanted to record information like that, that's available too. But again, the only thing I don't like about that is it's connected for, if you were monitoring individuals, it's connected to the pharmacy and it just creates more data to sell. I mean, you got to realize that stuff is out there. And I'm kind of, again, I go back to my code and I just, I realize it's out there, but I just remind people that, with certain services, it's there. But getting back to, using a device for something like that was outside of the pharmacy world and outside of selling data, I mean, you could do that.
mm.
Well, it would definitely let you know if the clients are actually taking the medication. Hopefully. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Again, if you could just port that into, like Microsoft Health Vault or something like that, and again, get it out of the third party's hand that's going to collect and sell the data, going direct, it would be, pretty useful.
Wow. Um, yeah, because another high tech thing I've seen that we're gonna laugh about is the electronic cigarettes that some of the patients use. So we're like far from this stuff. But I like the way the stuff is going. I certainly think they have many applications in our industry. Um, Now about how people search for trials. Like, let's say I'm Bob in Ohio,
Hmm.
and I'm looking for a study. You know, the majority of people still don't know where to go to look for trials, and the internet, I mean, it can certainly help, but it hasn't really, outside of Craigslist, and right, which is very low tech.
Yeah.
So
And the way they're advertised on Craigslist is pretty interesting too.
yeah, I did a post on that yesterday.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know
that's
some
what
of
you
them
did.
are illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should do one where I just go on Craigslist with a camera and read off the ads, just on a random day, so I'm not
For
making it up.
research.
Well,
Oh.
you'll see,
Yeah.
like, in a flyer, you can never say, come here and earn money, right?
Right.
But on Craigslist, you see it all the time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know, they've got everything on there, and the wording on it. It is funny. You probably would do good to have a post like that to read a few of those off.
I think I will, and someone can look at ours, the ones we put up, and do the same thing. But here's what we
Complete
do.
violation of IRB rules and laws.
Yes, all of them, most of them are.
Put the one up there if you can find the one where they want people to come in and smoke marijuana. Though that'd be cool.
That would be funny.
Get paid to smoke marijuana.
Yeah, yeah. I swear, I know we've laughed about it, but I think I've even, honest to God, seen that on there.
I'm sure there has, and I was gonna say ours. I put one up maybe once every 2 weeks. All it says is we are South Coast Clinical Trials. We conduct studies for psychiatry, and by the way, here's our blog. You don't need any IRB approval for that or anything. But the other ones I see on there, they go in great detail. You can identify what study it is if you know what you're looking for.
Sure.
Oftentimes, I know what studies they're advertising for, and I know an IRB did not approve those. They say guaranteed free medication, things like that.
Well, see, and this also goes, I think, back to a subject that I've talked about before, and that we've had a lot of discussion, is that in recruiting, a lot of times these sites, and they're set up by doctors, they think that they can just take anyone and start recruiting. They don't realize recruiting is just as much as a specialty as any other position.
Mm-hmm.
And you really have to know what you're saying to the public, and what's IRB approval, what's not IRB approval, and if you're going to develop a flyer that you don't want to go through IRB approval, then you have to be very careful what you're saying. It's got to be very generic.
Yeah.
It still cannot be coercive in any way, and they still don't get it.
Yeah, I know. You just wonder how some of this stuff, just flies out there. I mean, I shake my head sometimes.
Yeah, and the Facebook pages is the same thing. It's just, and then there's ways that they can target people on Twitter. They're not really doing much of that. But my question was going to be, before I got sidetracked, which that will be a good blog post to do. I think we can do one after we do this interview. You just pick a random day and you go on there. Los Angeles Craigslist volunteers. You're going to see tons of stuff.
Well, I look at them in the OC, so yeah, it's just as bad.
Yeah. But anyways, for search, now, how can the technology help people find studies? Theoretically, you can get studies sent to your cell phone, and they'll know where you live, so once a new study's enrolling, they'll just send you an alert. But people don't sign up for these things because, number one, they don't know that they do exist, and number two, they won't know where to get them from. So do you see that changing in the future?
Well, and I'll just put a little plug in here, though, too, for a company that I like that makes the search easy, and I keep their little widget on my blog. It's TrialX, and basically you can go in there with that widget, and you can put the condition that you're looking for in there, and it'll search it and everything for you. And in addition, they've, it connects both with Google Health and Health Vault. So if you want to, you've got another option. If you've got a, decent enough information in your PHR, you can actually use your PHR to search out and find clinical trials that would fit. Because sometimes, let's say you were looking for a clinical trial on hypertension, but maybe that clinical trial wasn't taking people that had diabetes. You know what I mean? I mean, it's I use that as a simple example, but the personal health record would eliminate you from those where that was a parameter on it. So, but I like I like their little search tool. They make it real easy. You can search it out, and I don't know if they still have it going or not, but I played with it for a while. They had a little Twitter notification going to where you could get a tweet. It's kind of a kick.
I played with that one. I pretended that I was looking for a schizophrenia study.
Uh-huh.
And maybe a week later, they got back to me and said no. Uh,
Really?
but
Well,
yeah,
I signed up for it when they first started a while back, and it was really funny because I did something pretty generic, something pretty common, and that I would get like a few tweets a week when new
mm,
ones would come up. It's been a while since I've done it, but just
yeah,
their widget that they have on there now is pretty complete, and it seems like they make it easy to, sign up with an investigator and so on and so forth too.
yes, yeah. They look for PIs to sign up, and there's a system in place there, and also the drug companies. I don't know if they're dealing specifically with pharma or they're just dealing with research clinics.
Well, they've got everything that's on the, the U.S. Government clinical trial site, U.S. Gov, and then they've, I forget who else got a partnership, and they've got a bunch of other clinical trials, another big database on there too.
Oh, okay, we'd like to interview one of those guys. That would
Yeah,
make for a good interview.
Definitely.
yeah. Well, actually, it's really funny though. It's been a while back, but I can't think of his name, but he was down here in Southern California, and we actually made a joint call over at a hospital and everything here to where he wanted to come along because we were talking about clinical trials, and he gave a little presentation to a group of doctors and everything as to, how to get started with it. So he just kind of dovetailed on the end of my social networking talk that I gave that day.
And what did your talk focus on?
My talk was focusing with doctors how to get started and use Twitter to get your news of the day and very very basics in social
Mm-hmm.
networking.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to a group of doctors that were at all different levels and all too. So, but yeah, occasionally I do that. I mean, over the years, it's really funny. When I was still writing code, I actually used to write some customized databases too. And so where we we're at a hospital where I had written some, software programs for them years ago, where I still had, people I knew and so on and so forth too. So, but yeah, I think probably one of the most interesting, and it's still being used today. One of the most interesting programs I wrote was for down in the Back Bay in Newport Beach. I wrote a customized program for a doctor that has a CT scanner,
Hmm.
and basically, this is kind of a funny story, so I hope you don't mind me just sharing this a little
Yes,
bit.
No,
please.
go ahead.
But he wanted a program that basically would notify all the doctors. I mean, he was doing them for, basically referrals for a reason. In other words, not just I walk in, I want a body scan. They would do those too, the retail, but basically most of the business was coming as a diagnostic, purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he wanted a program where all he had to do was click one button once a month. And I gave it to him. And basically, what I was able to do was pull calcium scores out of the database, out of the CT scanner, and I wrote a customized program to where he could drill down, find out his high score calcium deposit, patients and so on and so forth, and recall, people when it was time, 3 months, 6 months, all these various time frames, whether it was a virtual colonoscopy, whether it was a heart scan, or all of that. So at any rate, it was kind of funny. I got into quite a job there as far as working with some of his other data. So getting back to the scanner there, we always hear these talks about how doctors that own scanning equipment are always ripping people off, blah blah blah. Well, this is quite the different story, because he had a situation to where he had some billers, and things were kind of a mess there.
Mm.
Anyway, long story short, I'm going through and I'm matching up all his information to make sure we have all the billing straight and blah blah blah. And I found about 500,000 plus scans that he'd done that never got billed.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
so after finding that amount, his doctor finally said, "Stop! I can't take it anymore."
Wow. Sounds like us in the old days at South Coast Clinical Trials.
Yeah.
We have transportation reimbursements for years.
Yeah.
I remember sending a big invoice one day, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, this is from like '05 to '08."
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, we never got it. No,
Wow.
No, technology can help these kind of things.
absolutely.
Exactly. I just thought that was worth a mention, because you always hear the bad side of it, how they're
Yeah.
doing to rip money, and it's not always that way.
They never focus on those kind of things, right? Like, sometimes they don't bill, and they don't have time to bill.
Hey, Barbara, can we? I just want to transition over to another subject, and that's insurance and how this technology can be applied to insurance.
Okay. Well, as far as what's the question on insurance? As far as
you're dealing, like we were talking about, the whole healthcare records and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, and obviously with the doctors, it helps them get paid. But
Mm-hmm.
how can this be applied with working with the insurance company? I know it's sort of a generic and general question.
Yeah, that's why I asked you to clarify because I wasn't sure I heard it right. Well, if you read my blog often enough, you'll see me pick on the insurance companies, you know. And
Okay,
again,
well, pick
it's
away.
it's all their algorithms, it's their mathematical formulas. I mean, all of our human bodies are shoved into databases and analyzed, and we're crunched in there, and our bodies are hurting, you know. Yeah, it is important to, get the right information to the insurance companies in their defense, from that standpoint.
Hmm.
But as far as the records, I mean, that's basically goes, I mean, that's a claim, that's going to the insurance company to pay and so on and so forth. And, they do, I don't know what you do as far as, are you talking about clinical trial reimbursement on any of the claims?
Well, no, clinical trials, we don't get reimbursed on claims. It's set up a little different. We're actually contracted with big pharma to actually conduct these studies, and it's a lot of
Okay.
times based on per visits on that we complete. And then of course those visits have to be reviewed, audited, and once that's done and they're okay with that, then you can go ahead and invoice them for that visit. It's a little
Mm-hmm.
different. Um, I know insurance companies, like you were talking about before, the EOB, the was a collection of benefits. That's how they initiated that. They acknowledged that there was a visit done by the doctor or the hospital, and that they're going to pay whatever amount they're going to pay.
Hmm.
Uh,
Well, one thing, if you haven't paid attention, and again, I'll get off on a little bit of a soapbox here, but it's the only way I can really explain it here. If you haven't watched the mergers and acquisitions that have taken place in the last 2 years, you're missing a big boat there. Everybody thinks of an insurance company as just that, just an insurance company, pays claims, takes in money, pays claims. But if you look at Aetna and United Healthcare, they're buying up all these health IT companies anymore. So, I mean, with even some of the acquisitions, I mean, the VA hospital right now, with some of the technologies Aetna has bought, is finding themselves in business with, Aetna because they own the subsidiary. So now getting back to the doctor's level and everything here, a lot of the insurance companies are now buying a lot of the Independent Physicians Association. United Healthcare just bought a big one down here in Orange in Long Beach. They bought Memorial Care, the IPA, big chunk. So
oh,
now what's going on with a lot of this and buying a lot of the technology that the insurance companies have? It's really bizarre, and it's frustrating to the doctors because they'll have, Blue Cross, Aetna, whatever. I'm just throwing names out. They'll have them come in and they'll negotiate a cheaper contract. I mean, you read that in the news every day. That's nothing new.
hmm,
And then with one of their technology arms, maybe the technology arm sells HIE, health technology, connection technology, or
hmm.
they sell a medical records program. So, they come in and whack 13% off the compensation rate. And then they got a lead. And so anyway, if the doctor hasn't bought medical records yet, they send one of their subsidiaries in to sell them software to keep what they got.
Wow.
That is starting to happen like crazy. And it's just, these guys are like, it's crazy. It's nuts. So, in other words, what I do is, and I try to decipher this on my blog, when looking for doctors, when you're looking for medical records, see who owns them. So, I mean, if you're mad at XYZ insurance company, make sure that the medical record company isn't owned by that insurance company.
That's
Because
quite
all
interesting, isn't
subsidiaries,
it?
they all got to put profits down to the bottom line, which go to the shareholders.
Hmm.
There's a
Absolutely.
lot of that going on. And they're even coming into right now a lot of the clearinghouses. It's worth it to an insurance company to use a clearinghouse because the complicated billing that we have, and it's a mess. So it's worth it to an insurance company to have the doctor use the clearinghouse to scrub the bills.
Hmm.
And so basically, the clearinghouses now are actually getting squeezed too. They're getting their rates that they get paid reduced from the insurance companies. Now, some of the clearinghouses charge doctors, some charge the insurance companies, some charge both. So you've got that little war, going on as well. And then you have the again some of the insurers. are buying clearinghouses now too. So when you look at all of this, I mean, and then let's go one step further. When you look at all the Medicare claims that are processed and everything, who is processing the claims? All the contractors or subsidiaries of insurance companies. So the claims, they have CMS has a file. Obviously, when they're paid, and in Washington, they were basically the infrastructure that the government never got to build. Unlike Social Security, which runs on COBOL, but still does the job and very solid, by the way. So when you look at that, if you're not paying attention to mergers and acquisitions today, I mean, it's like wake up out there. If you go through my blog and put the words subsidiary watch in there, I try and title a lot of those articles subsidiary watch. I mean, people just about freak out when they find out United Healthcare has a bank with over $1 billion in deposit in there. I mean, it's just that they just don't put insurance and a bank together, but they got one.
Wow.
See, read my blog, you'll learn. Yeah, I'm probably not on their best side.
And believe me, those of you watching, the stuff we covered today just is the tip of the iceberg of what you can find on Barbara's blog. Once again, the Medical Quack. Just Google Medical Quack. Also, your Twitter name, right? Same handle?
Yep, Medical Quack. I'm at Twitter, Medical Quack. I'm easy to find there, too.
Yes.
Wow.
And we can go on for days. Barbara, we want to thank you for coming on.
Definitely. This has been wonderful, Barbara.
Well, thank
You're
you.
wonderful.
Thank you guys for having me. And, I hope I kept my balance today.
You did fantastic. I think
the geek side didn't pop out too bad.
And you, I mean, like Dan said, you've opened up so many other questions that we could expand on. But we'd probably be here for another 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, because people really do want to know what's going on, what trends what things are out right now. And Barbara's up to date on all these things. I mean, go to her blog. You will not need to buy another book on medical technology, things like you just read her blog, and you post multiple times a day.
Yes, I do, and actually, too, just so everybody knows, I do have a tiny bit of a funny section on there, too, so you'll find some little treats on there, too.
Right, and the app is coming out soon, Save the Duck.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I'm going to have to write to Microsoft about Kill the Duck. I'm going to have to tell them they should be saving that duck instead of killing it.
Yeah, copyright infringement.
There you go. I could go all kinds of places. Everybody else in their copyrights. It's too bad I'm not copyrighted.
Yeah, the patent war is going on. You should have one. You should have one on your name.
Yeah. Well, I think there's too many other ducks running around out there. I don't think I'd stand a chance, but it was a nice thought.
It's a good thought. Barbara, thank you. Like I said, Medical Quack, go check it out. You will not need to buy books on this stuff again. It's all free. She posts multiple times a day. Not just once, it's many times per day. So what's your average number of posts per day?
Well, it depends. I mean, occasionally I do skip a day occasionally. But I mean, you'll find anywhere. If I've had a real busy day and I haven't been able to get much on, I mean, I may load, a couple on one day, and then the next day I might load it up with 6 or 7, So, it just depends on my time and schedule, what I have time to do. But always, though, too, follow me on Twitter, because sometimes I tweet things I don't have time, to blog, but that are important. And then also I have the custom search engine from Google on my blog. That thing is remarkable. Just put a couple keywords in there, and it'll search my whole blog and, give you 6 different drop-down columns of titles you can look through.
Fantastic.
Wow.
It's ducknetweb.blogspot.com, otherwise known as
Medical Quack.
Medical Quack. Just Google it. Barbara, thank you. Stay on the line.
Thank you very much, Barbara.
Thank you.
This is Dan and Don signing off from theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Thanks a lot.